This film was taken in 1929, shows Boy Scouting in its early years in the George Rogers Clark Area Council. Tunnel Mill is a permanent scout camp for Boy Scouts for south central Indiana. It's located approximately 4 miles from Charlestown, Indiana. Oh boy, what it means to pack up and to go to camp. This is the roadway coming down from the entrance near the ranger's home. The bugler started off the first of the week with reveille, the very first thing every morning. His name was James Heimball of Sellersburg, Indiana. This is the scouts coming down every morning. They slip up above the farmer boat dock. They come down for their morning dip, their good old morning skinny dip, and their exercise. This is a picture of the dining hall. This dining hall was then called the mess hall. It's not the present building. That building burnt down some years later. The kids come down for their meals from out of the trees and the bushes, just like locusts is coming down. You see the guy in the front line happens to be Byron Drumb, just getting pushed down there. Behind him is Dr. John Paris. All the meals at that time were eaten in the dining hall. The number ran anyway from 125 up to as many as 175 each week. The camp at that time ran for 8 consecutive weeks, full every week. This is a picture of the handicraft lodge. This was located across the creek. There's where the kids learned how to make leather work, woodworking, archery. They made their bows there. This boy working on his bird cage is Byron Drumb. Behind him is Dr. John Paris. This is a museum where all the various animals, reptiles, insects that were caught here at camp were kept, where all the scouts could look at this collection. This is quite an interesting thing. It was a daily activity. The kids went down, they identified them out of their scout book. This is where they learned some of the things they had to pass for their merit badge. This is a copperhead snake, and if you watch very closely, you'll see it in its cage there. This was quite a little museum we had established there. Notice all the merit badges on the scout behind there. This is a little harmless grass snake. This film was paid for by C.T. Hurst, who was very active and president of the council back in 1929. And C.T. had such a great love for Boy Scouting that he decided that there should be a film made the very first year that Tunnel Mill opened. And he proceeded to finance the thing and hired a professional photographer. Hurst was one of the great scouters of the George Rogers Clark Area Council. I came out here in 1929, first year scout, and stayed, was going to stay 1 week. And I liked it so well, I said, well, I'll stay the second week. And I really wound up, and I stayed all 8 weeks. I came the day the camp opened, and I left the day it closed. Well, the next year, I guess I had more camping than anybody, so I applied to be a member of the camp staff. And at that time, Mr. C.T. Hurst, who was president of the council, was interviewing the boys for the camp staff. And they hired me, and I've served in various capacities as hike master and so forth. In 1932, which was my last year I served on the camp staff, C.T. Hurst and I had a great conversation, and I was getting ready to go to the 10th Olympic Games, and I told him, I said, we ought to do something with that film. And I said, sometime down the road, if you ever decide to do anything with the film, I'd like to have it. So a few years later, I ran into him again, and I asked him if he'd ever done anything in film. He said, well, you told me you'd like to have it, Byron. And I said, I sure would. I said, if you give it to me, I'll see that it's taken care of and preserved for the council. Well, that was 50 years ago, and we still have the film today, and this is it. Today, we no longer have teepees here at camp. We do have very modern tents, but these were some Indian teepees we were able to secure. Just like today, they had all the activities that we have today at Tunnel Mill. Every scout, as you notice on there, went camping during the year. Notice the pack the kids have on their back there. They're out for their overnight camping. You learned all the scout crafts that you learned today. This looking on down towards what is now the rifle range and the archery range, almost down to the council ring. Here the kids can pass their cooking merit badges. Camping was a unique thing back in the early days of scouting, and we started off with a bang with the very first year with full capacity. But these were the kids that were there 50 years ago in 1929, the very first year that Tunnel Mill opened. This is looking up the creek, and if you notice in the background, this is a famous suspension bridge. There was ample time for the boys to row the boats, paddle the canoes, and all sports came in for their full share. We had some great pitchers here. We had some real hitters in those days, too. We didn't produce any Babe Ruths, but we had a lot of fun. This is up on the Scoutmaster's Flats, and some of the little spindly trees now you see are great sycamores, and 50 years later. In a moment you're going to see some of the Boy Scout first aid come into real practice because one of the kids accidentally trips and hurts his ankle, and they go into real immediate action with first aid. They set up some scenes like you do in the movies, naturally, but this was a production. I mean, this guy had not only had one movie guy, but he had an assistant to carry it around the thing. And this was a movie that not run by electricity. This was all hand ground movie. They did it with the hand projectors, and they turned it this way. That was wow. The little boy on the left-hand side, the second boy, has quite a problem trying to lift this scout, but he makes it. Made their own stretcher to carry the kid back to the first aid station. The ranger's dog also gets in the game just as much as the kids do, and it's quite an event. Every Thursday night, just like they do in 1979, the parents all came out to visit their son on what's still called Parents' Night. They got in the action, they played the ball. This is a picture of Homer Frank, one of the executive board members of the George Rogers Clark Council at that time. If you notice the wearing apparel of some of the mothers, you can see the high styles of 1929. You'd never know the difference between the kids, but you can sure tell the difference in the clothing of the parents. The little green skull cap you see on these kids was given to every boy for the first year camper. That was called a satisfactory camper. If they stayed here the second week, they earned a blue skull cap, which meant they were a merit camper. Then the third week, they got an orange cap if they were selected by the camp staff as being an outstanding camper. So you could get 3 types of skull caps. Back to the horseshoes, they had all the sports that you still have today. This is an open archery range. They started out from one place, went all the way around the campsites with the scouts out of the way, and made their own archery course, and the guy that got around the whole course with the least number of shots was declared the winner. We challenge you. They had some real archers in those days. This was a handicraft lodge looking from the other direction. They're going on down towards the waterfront, on walking up towards the present rifle range. A number of those guys on the camp staff are business leaders in our council area today. This was back before we had the rifle range. We didn't have rifle range in those days. We did have the archery range. That's Cal Raggy, now president of Louisville Tin and Stove. This fellow is Bud Fyoke, Fyoke Plumbing. Some of the names have gotten away from me. Also in that group was Gordon Rainey, the famous basketball coach. That's he shooting there. Camp was bought in 1928. The first year they got it into production was in the summer of 1929 in June. This is looking out over Scoutmaster's Flat toward the creek. Coming up right now is the area and where the present swimming pool is located. In those days, 1929, swam in the creek. Up until 1968, when through very gracious scouters and contributors, we were able to build the present swimming pool. This was our famous dock area here. In the background, you can see the swinging bridge. Of course, if you see the swimsuits on the guys, they're 1929. That's why they got straps on them. Would you believe they used a buddy system? This is where it all started. Back in 1929, you get your buddy, boy. They had buddy drill. This is our dock. Very shortly, they'll be practicing a rescue operation. This is the same creek. So scouts being ever prepared or ready to go to action, our illustrious crew will go out in a rowboat and rescue the boy in distress. Notice the guy with the back paddle. Wham! That wasn't planned. That just happened to happen. The water at that level at that time was about 8 to 9 feet deep in front of the dock there. It made possible diving. We could row up just about as far as you can row or paddle your canoe up today. None of the dock exists today. It's all gone. Right above that dock is where we now have our boat and canoe facility where you put the boats in and the canoes in. They were using the pressure method of artificial respiration at that time. This is the advantage of knowing your first aid and your safety. Of course, you had the opportunity to pass your swimming merit badge, your rowing and canoeing, and as an extra added attraction, we even had our water polo games. We're getting ready for a terrific water polo game here. The guys are diving into the creek now, and pretty soon you're going to see one of the wildest action water polo game that you've ever seen. you had to be really an expert swimmer, and actually have life-saving merit badge before they let you participate in this very strenuous activity. This gets pretty rough. It's a lot of fun, but boy, you better have been able to swim. You had to look fast to even keep up with the ball. And not only that, besides that, you had to swim fast to keep up with it. It really didn't matter who won. It was just a lot of fun, and that's all really that counted. We had a couple teams of the fastest canoeists in this area. They really moved out. And I want to tell you, look at that canoe go up in the front, boy. The guy in the back had really put that canoe out there. We even had some Will Rogers rope tricks that Ralph Brazier, our aquatics director, that's the guy doing the rope trip there, was quite an expert at this thing. The dock that you see there doesn't exist anymore, but this was provided by the American Car and Foundry, which Mr. C.T. Hurst was president at that time of the American Car and Foundry. A number of these guys are your leading businessmen in the 6 counties today. The clown there is Herbie Fine. He's with Fine Shirt Factory. The very first Scout executive we had, you see there, was E.W. Craig, Whit Craig. In the background is another picture of the suspension bridge. The dining hall is provided by the Benford Brotherhood of Trinity Church at that time. Since then, it is burnt down, it's been replaced. And next year, in 1980, we hope to have another new dining hall built on the upper 80. Just like today, for the past 50 years, they've had excellent cooks. They provide you excellent meals, and no place can you go camping for the nominal fee that we charge to come to Tunnel Mill. All you have to do is blow mass call, and they're coming out of the trees and the bushes just to get there. It was quite a feat to be able to maneuver yourself up in line. There was a couple culprits there that was always able to wiggle up in the front of the line. Watch this stampede. This was a real thrill of the scout camp. This is a suspension bridge. And actually, to be able to cross it was quite an ordeal or a task to do it. Because when the bridge got to swinging and swaying and the scouts on their way, you had to hold on for dear life because it was a swinging bridge. That bridge went down in a flash flood. At that time, I was serving as hike master and was one of the last people to cross the bridge. We were over evacuating the scouts from the other side so they wouldn't be hurt. And the cables broke, and we had to go hand over hand to the other side. It was quite an experience. This picture is taken up at the hilltop. They're lowering the flag, closing day service. And look at the number of scouts. Never having less than 125 for any given week. Every campsite was full. You can probably almost hear the bugle. We're now at the canteen call hour. This is where the kids were able to buy all the things out of the canteen, candy, any of their handicraft work. Coming out right now, Byron Drumb, third guy there. Even the camp staff got into the action here. Everybody, this is where you bought anything they had to sell, this is where you bought it. We had some quite famous campfires. We had some very impressive Indian ceremonial dances. This is the illustrious camp staff team. This was back before the time that the Order of the Air was instituted into Tunnel Mill. That picture is of Dana Shelby from Charleston, Indiana, now an insurance representative, still in Charleston. That's Herbie Fine, associated with Fine Shirt Factory. This was a campfire council ring at that time. This is the start of the famous Thursday night campfire dance. Back in 1929, there were very, very few people that even had a movie projector, let alone being able to finance and produce a film, a movie. And this was something unusual, and that's why you have all the ham actors showing up in this film. It got wilder and wilder and wilder. As you know, a scout is reverent. He's reverent to God. He's faithful in his religious duties and respects the convictions and the matters and customs of others, all using the scout sign. In the closing campfire, notice the hand clasps around the fire, and they give the scout benediction. So, camping today at Tunnel Mill Scout Camp is just as great today as it has been in the past 50 years. It's still being improved, and we intend to continue to do so. So have the time of your life. Come spend a week or two at Tunnel Mill. It's an experience that you'll never forget. We'll see you next summer. You better believe it.